Hi, fellow true crime podcast fans. I am Matt Harris, and along with my friend Seton Tucker, we host a podcast called The Murdoch Family Murders: Impact of Influence. It's a story of greed and of power, of a Southern dynasty, of murder, of unsolved cases, and missing money. Please join us as we release these as things happen in this case. And I think you may have seen the Murdochs on the cover of People magazine or on CNN. The story's gone national. We started the podcast back in June, and it continues to amaze even us, the new things that break every day on this case. So please download and subscribe from Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcast to the Murdoch Family Murders: Impact of Influence. We thank you, true crime podcast fans, in advance.
I'm Emily Rowney.
And I'm Alicia Holland.
This is Bill Camp, the voice of Forensic Files 2 on HLN, and you're listening to Murder in the Rain.
It's that time of year again, the best time, Halloween time. I think part of Halloween's appeal is how it can be a mix of Disneyland with Las Vegas, but with a lot of candy. We decorate our homes with things that any other time of year might be deemed macabre. Excuses need not be made to act wild, silly, or childlike. Costumes of clothing we would never dream of wearing around our friends and family become totally acceptable.
Like Mean Girls. I love that. It's the only time of year you can dress like a total SLUT.
Oh, is that a quote?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Rules become obsolete, and the line of expected behaviors begins to blur. Today, I'll be telling two stories of lives lost on Halloween, a pair from Alaska and a teen in British Columbia. All three victims having held out hopes for an enjoyable Halloween night while falling victim to the horrors the holiday can bring. Marie Riley of Alaska made the news back in November of 2015. She had just graduated from Juneau's Therapeutic Court, which was a program she participated in lieu of going to jail. Marie had a long, difficult relationship with alcohol. Growing up in the tiny village of Napakiak in Alaska, she had a happy childhood with her family, her dad a public safety officer for the village with a population of just 400. But then adulthood came, and it wasn't so idyllic. Starting in 1984 with the dissolution of her marriage to Gary Riley. In 91, things started to change for the worse. First, just a citation for not wearing a seatbelt, leading to more serious offenses like driving under the influence. From there, domestic violence charges between her and her partners. As her criminal activity increased in severity and frequency, so did her consequences. From DV to DUII, she was then charged with theft and forgery, earning her time in jail. As the years went on, her rap sheet grew: shoplifting, false police reports, larceny, probation violations, trespassing, more DUIs, and driving with a revoked license. All of these violations earned her a life in and out of jail. She spent time at the Lemon Creek Correctional Center and even Juneau's Haven House, kind of a halfway house for women. And Marie was memorable to the staff of the Haven House. She was angry and difficult. The director of the program even saying, quote, "She was an angry little lady. She really was. Her presence, she exuded anger. And she had a right to be angry. She hadn't been a drinker growing up. She was a mother to Denise, Josephine, Brian Sr., Janelle, Roberta, Amber, and Robert. It wasn't until her family suffered personal losses and turmoil that she began to self-medicate. One of the biggest tipping points was the loss of her daughter, Josephine." Here's a little behind the scenes for you guys. After digging for hours, I was only able to determine it was Josephine that had been murdered. However, the only article or really anything with any information I could find was from a Google group. In that group, the person posted what looks to be a legitimate article from the Anchorage Daily News. However, the person that posted it was from a patriarchal group and put a very disrespectful headline with the article in the group, which received messages from one of Marie's children and Marie herself.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, he titled it "Bitter Girl Kills Bitter Girl." And so because it was, and I don't really understand how Google groups work, but it's kind of like an email forum, it looks like. And so Josephine's sister, I believe, posted a couple responses of like, yeah, call the other girl bitter, but don't say that about my sibling and how dare you, just really upset. And then Marie actually went on and was like, hi, I'm actually her mother. Could you please not, like, was very calm and respectful about it to try to, get him to change, and there were no responses.
That's so hard because I don't think people think about that kind of stuff sometimes when they post because they're hiding behind a screen name.
Or you're like, oh, I'm in this group for men, and so we're going to call them names. And it's like, that's literally her daughter.
And you search that name, what do you think pops up?
Oh, it's one of the only things I found.
That's very, very sad and disappointing.
Yeah. I reached out to the Anchorage Daily News after scouring newspapers.com and Anchorage Daily News' archive, but I was unable to find the original article, all of which turned up bupkis. So I can only say I believe this is an accurate article, but if anyone has any additional information about her case, please send it our way. It was January 7th of 2005 when Josephine Pillack Ann Riley, 21, her friend Margaret Maggie Jacob Anvil, 28, and her boyfriend were all hanging out at Josephine's place. Drinking through the evening, it was about 1:30 a.m. when the boyfriend left, but Maggie didn't. Waiting for Josephine to fall asleep, it was about a half hour later when Maggie lit some blankets on fire and strolled out of the house, leaving Josephine behind to die of asphyxiation.
Purposefully?
Yes. It was 2 a.m. when the calls to 911 were made about a fire engulfing the house. It wasn't until later that day when investigators discovered human remains in the rubble, eventually confirming that it was Josephine's body. It was believed that during the hangout, an intoxicated Josephine maybe made passes or was flirting with Maggie's boyfriend, which was enough of a reason for her to kill her friend. She was arrested for first-degree murder and first-degree arson. She was held on $100,000 bail. Before killing Josephine, Maggie had only a few charges of disorderly conduct and as a minor in possession of alcohol. I was able to find her charges, and since I'm not a lawyer, I can't say I fully understand where she is in her legal process, but it looks like she has already served her time for the murder, which appears to have been only about 10 years, and she's currently trying to fight having her probation lifted.
So that means it's not first-degree murder.
Yeah, I'm thinking she maybe took a plea deal or something.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and she has since moved to Anchorage and changed her name.
Well, yeah.
Understandably.
Every time we do an episode, for the life of me, I don't understand how you get to that point.
Of getting to change your name or killing someone?
Killing someone who's your friend, your family member. I understand the concept of like walking in on your lover in the arms of someone else.
Maybe, yeah.
And then like hitting them over the head with the lamp. I get that.
Right.
But for the life of me, I mean, maybe she was a hothead and didn't think it through, but
I'm not a drinker, so I can't really speak to the feeling of being drunk, but it's like, I don't know if you can get so drunk. Not excusing
it. You were tipsy one time. I will call
barely,
you out.
Barely. Certainly not enough to be like, what did I do? So I don't know if that's something that she attributes to it, to be like, oh, I was blackout drunk. I had no idea what I was doing.
Because that is real. Blackout drunk is a thing, and you wouldn't have any memory.
But it's also like, but that's what you do?
Ew,
that's still
that's
in
scary.
you. That's still like your inhibitions being taken down.
I find it frightening that at any given moment a friend could do something like that.
Yep.
It makes you not want to have friends and just live in the woods alone.
I mean, I'm working on it. It was in 2015 when Marie realized her surviving children and grandchildren needed her in their lives, and she was determined to turn her life around. Entering her therapeutic program, she never missed a day, always showed up to court, and took the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous seriously. As reaching recovery came closer and closer to reality, Marie's life didn't magically become easier. She lost her father, one of her sons started having health issues of his own, and through it all, she persevered. Her biggest tip for anyone struggling with sobriety: be open and be surrounded by positive, encouraging people. That's my number one thing. That's what really taught me what I needed. After being known as the Messy Town Drunk, it was an inspirational and powerful moment to see Marie get her certificate from the therapeutic program. That's why she was featured in the paper. Everyone wanted to celebrate her success. Those that had worked with her saw a woman transition from an angry alcoholic to a thriving mother, neighbor, friend, and grandmother. Even when it seemed hopeless, they knew that giving her the opportunity to work on her issues would lead to a healthier, longer-term positive outcome than just more jail time. That was back in 2015. Fast forward to noon on October 31st, 2020, when police were called to the Fairview Apartments, where there were reports of 2 bodies found in one of the units. Police arrived and found a grisly, bloody scene at the home of 60-year-old beloved mother and sober superstar Marie Riley, where she had been entertaining a guest, George Tredekoff. It's unclear what the nature of their relationship was, but just like Marie, George had his own difficult past. He, too, had a history of offenses similar to Marie. And like Marie, he had been featured in the newspaper, although his story had been 40 years earlier. It just so happened that George and a friend had gone fishing in January of 1977. Catching 77 rainbow trout out of season, George was arrested and sent to jail for 19 days. 19 days that were so confined and cold, George contemplated taking his own life. He made it out alive and was interviewed later that year to discuss the ever-changing laws of the Alaskan wilderness. As an Eskimo, George was frustrated that the federal government's laws were impeding his and his family's ability to maintain their lifestyle. An example he gave of how the laws benefited the predominantly white sports hunters that came to the area for hunting was that the fishing permits were allowed in the summer, when most indigenous persons were away for seasonal work. Seeing as he too struggled with alcohol, I can only guess that perhaps the two met at a meeting or crossed paths through recovery. There was an article where a family member of Marie's mentioned they didn't know who George was, so it appears he hadn't been a long-term friend or partner. Along with the discovery of Marie and George's bodies, which had been stabbed to death, bloody handprints were found as well. Those easily led detectives to Christopher Legends. Just like his victims, he had a history of run-ins with police, but his charges were more serious, as was his jail time. Among his visits to the clinker, Christopher had been charged with assault, reckless battery, criminal mischief, interfering with the report of a domestic violence incident, failing to follow officer directions, and his biggest charges, assault in the 4th degree with reckless injury, causing fear of injury, all part of a domestic violence incident, and later, assault against a police officer, resisting arrest, and fleeing. Those events were in 2016 and 2019, respectively. Pleading guilty and sent away on the latter charges, Christopher was jailed until early October 2020, just 3.5 weeks before the murders of Marie and George. With the murders happening just shy of a year ago, Christopher is still in the court process. He has been charged with 2 counts of murder 1, 2 counts of murder 2, and 1 count of tampering with evidence. Once we hear if he takes a plea or goes to trial, we will keep you posted. There appears to be no motive or reasoning behind the vicious killings. It's just so sad when you hear that someone was able to overcome their own personal demons or the hindrances that accompanies being an indigenous person, especially in Alaska, only to have the success, love, and inspiration those people bring to the people they care for ripped away so needlessly and horrendously.
I was going to say that. There's something extra heart-wrenching when it's somebody's put in so much work to overcome all those things that were holding them down. And then this happens.
And so often we hear those things when someone's the victim, you know, especially like a sex worker. It's like, oh, they struggled with drugs, or so it almost like excuses it, or like it diminishes.
Yeah,
that's a perfect word. And so it's like, here's this person who was disregarded in normal ways of just like, oh, you know, she's kind of the mess. And this team around her, they all worked, but she had to put the work in. Like anyone in recovery, it's the person doing it for themselves, and she did it. And it's like, here she was ready to start that life after losing a child so horribly and, you know, devastated by the loss of her father, and then just gone.
Yeah.
And for what appears to be I didn't see anything about suspected robbery or
did she have a relationship with him? Maybe
there's no indication that any of them knew each other.
Wow.
So I will be very interested to hear where his trial goes and what they end up saying happens.
Yeah, because they're going to have some sort of motive in court.
Something. Or if he takes a plea and maybe gives a confession or something. But I'll be very interested to find out what that was.
Yeah. Or what evidence they found that they're not releasing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there's so much to build the case. So we will keep you guys posted as soon as we hear any updates. They say variety is the spice of life. They also say that Drizzly is like having the world's largest liquor store in the palm of your hand. So why not spice up your life with Drizzly?
I don't know who they is, but they are certainly right. Drizzly is making everything easier by delivering a variety of alcohol right to your door in under 60 minutes.
Their app connects you directly to their local liquor stores and lets you compare prices for the best deals and the widest selection of beer, wine, and liquor.
Now I don't have to stop at multiple stores for weekly ladies' night. I can just grab my phone and order my fave Cab Sauv on the app.
And I don't have to miss out on the fun when I have to run out to get booze at our get-togethers. It's not fair that the only sober person has to cater to you, yahoos.
Avoid the lines and don't skimp on variety. Try Drizzly.
So check out Drizzly now by downloading the Drizzly app or going to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. And use promo code SPICE5 for $5 off your first order.
That's drizzly.com and use code SPICE5 for $5 off.
Drizzly!
Summer is over, there's a chill in the air. Spooky season has arrived, so let's watch scary movies.
And there is no better place for horror than Shudder, which has kicked off its annual 61 Days of Halloween, a 2-month supersized celebration full of new movies and series, like a new season of Creepshow and VHS 94, the brand new installment in the acclaimed found footage anthology franchise.
And that's just the start of Shudder's unbeatable Halloween lineup. There are new specials from Elvira and Joe Bob Briggs, a new season of the Boulet Brothers' Dragula, their new docuseries Behind the Monsters on the origins and pop culture dominance of your favorite modern movie monsters, and so much more.
Murder in the Rain have been longtime fans of Shudder. As you know, last October we hosted our 31 Days of Horror and even battled it out between us to determine which horror movie ranks at the top.
That was so fun. And Shudder was basically an honorary Murder in the Rain co-host because we watched a ton of movies on their app.
That's because they offer so much. From classics to modern favorites, unknown gems, and original series, Shudder is a must-have for horror fans. Now our listeners can cash in on a special deal so they can spend this October watching right along with us.
Get started streaming the best horror, thriller, and supernatural content. Shudder's expertly curated collection includes must-see titles like Vicious Fun, The Mortuary Collection, and PG Psycho Gorman, plus all the best horror documentaries and hit Creepshow TV series from executive producer Greg Nicotero of The Walking Dead.
And you know you love your zombies.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to join us in our Halloween fun and watch horror movies until your eyes bleed, we have a special deal for you. To try Shudder free for 30 days, go to shudder.com and use promo RAIN. That's SHUDDER.com and use promo code RAIN. Happy Halloween, uglies! It's summertime and I'm ready to rest, relax, and catch some rays.
Well, don't forget your sunscreen.
Of course I won't. I also won't forget my Kefla Organics CBD.
Good plan. Kefla Organics is one of my favorite ways to relax and enjoy the benefits of CBD, whether I'm at home with a tea reading some true crime or laying at the beach on my day off.
Kefla Organics is a fair trade, vegan, refined sugar-free CBD company. And at KeflaOrganics.com, you'll find chocolate bars, hot cocoa, chai lattes, and more, making the taking of CBD a lot more enjoyable than a regular tincture.
And Murder in the Rain listeners can get 20% off using the promo code RAIN20.
So follow at Enjoy Kefla on social media and visit KeflaOrganics.com. Use the code RAIN20 at checkout to save 20% while enjoying guilt-free, stress-reducing, sleep-assisting, delicious Kefla Organics CBD products. My second story today comes from Armstrong, British Columbia. Located about 290 miles northeast of Vancouver, on a map you could land on it by going north from Pendleton, Oregon, or Kennewick in Washington. With a population of only about 5,000 people and plenty of job opportunities, Armstrong was actually named one of the top 20 best Canadian cities to live in. The safety of the small town made the shocking discovery on Halloween 2011 all the more hard to comprehend. Taylor Van Diest was just 18 years old in 2011. She and her twin sister had recently graduated from Pleasant Valley Secondary School, where she enjoyed playing flute in the jazz band, blues band, and the junior-senior band. Music was her biggest passion. Taylor was a popular teenager, witty, loved, and talented. She hadn't decided the direction she wanted to take in her life, but her family would have been proud no matter where her dreams took her. Feeling like she was coming to an age where trick-or-treating would no longer be acceptable, Taylor made plans for one more Halloween night out. Only a year after the premiere of The Walking Dead, Taylor chose the ever-popular zombie as her costume. Headed to her boyfriend's house for a party, Taylor left home at 6 p.m. that All Hallows Eve. As she made her way on foot, she was texting her boyfriend. It was nothing unusual until he received the message, "Being creeped," accompanied by a suspicious eyes emoji soon after Taylor left home. To her boyfriend's understanding, that meant someone was following Taylor. That was the last message Taylor sent.
Oh, how uncomfortable and spooky.
Terrifying. Going, "Hello, can you talk to me?" I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even fathom. After receiving that haunting text and realizing Taylor didn't make it to the party when she should have, her family was called. Quickly, Taylor's friends and family began searching for her. They made their way along the route Taylor would have taken from her house to her friends. At 7:30 p.m., someone found Taylor's phone near some train tracks and called her home, so the search party focused on the area the phone had been found. Taylor was just 8 blocks from her front door when at 8:45 p.m. in bushes near train tracks, she was found alive by her boyfriend. She was face down and had a steel pipe under her head. It was clear she had sustained injuries to her head and had been choked, as there were marks on her neck, redness in her eyes, and an open wound on her skull revealing blood and brain matter. Once discovered, Taylor was put in an ambulance and taken to the closest hospital, which, due to Armstrong's size, was in the city of Kelowna, an hour drive away. Sadly, even with all of the attempts made by the emergency medical team, Taylor died shortly after arriving. When canvassing the surrounding area, police spoke to a woman who lived close to where the attack took place. She claimed to have heard 2 female-sounding screams, but assumed they were related to Halloween scares. Upon autopsy, it was found that Taylor had been choked with a ligature and struck with a flashlight, and that her head had been hit into a pipe that was actually in the ground. She had been struck in the head 6 times, one of which was with such force it was the one that cracked her skull, leading to her demise. With no leads, police released photos of Taylor taken at home before she left. It's really hard to imagine seeing your child or friend in a torn-up costume with smears of blood across her face and have that be the last photo before she's found beaten and bloody. It's a really sad irony. In the months that passed, the only lead police received was from a letter that was sent to the detectives. It claimed to have been from Taylor's killer. But it didn't take them long to realize that the lack of detail and accuracy meant it was a fake.
Why do people do that?
Just
it makes me
seeking
so
attention.
pissed. But for what? You're not putting your name on it, so how are you actually getting attention?
Maybe it's a weird control thing, or just the delight of like,
It's
I
so
know
fucked up.
I know I'm wasting their time, or I know that I'm going to be the one to make them look into this or something.
There is a special place in hell for those types of people.
Absolutely. Although police were getting calls with tips, they had no real evidence to stand on. Luckily, a fast-thinking nurse at the hospital clipped Taylor's fingernails in case they had any DNA under them, which, thank goodness, she did. Running the DNA, it didn't give police a suspect, but it did come up as a match for a suspect of a sexual assault in 2005.
Oh, so they don't know who that person is.
No, but they go, that's a match to that.
So once they get that person,
That's
going to jail.
During that incident, a man had gone to the Garden of Eden, an escort agency. There was only one employee there at the time, and she took the young man on a tour. Getting to an upstairs bedroom, he grabbed the woman by her ponytail and pushed her to the ground. Pulling out a knife and holding it to the woman's throat, the attacker told her that she would be okay if she followed directions. Still holding the knife to her throat, he forced her to perform oral sex on him. He then forced her face down on a massage table before sodomizing her and binding her hands behind her back. Eventually, he left, and she was able to break out of the duct tape. Luckily, she not only reported the event, but she had scratched her assailant, unknowingly collecting the DNA that would eventually solve her rape and Taylor's murder. Interviewing the survivor of that incident, investigators were able to get a description of the suspect. They released all the details they had about him: height, age, weight, hair, and eye color. Thanks to that information, hundreds of tips started pouring in. What investigators took note of was the dozens of tips that specifically came from Cherryville, another small town an hour southeast of Armstrong. Those tips all said they knew someone that matched the description of the suspect. That suspect's name was Matthew Forster. One of the stronger tips coming in was from Matthew's landlord, who claimed he fled his apartment just days after Taylor's death. Seeking more evidence, the police started to monitor the phone calls of Matthew's father. That's when they overheard 60-year-old Stephen Forster talking to his 28-year-old son Matthew, who was getting tips from his dad as to how to evade police.
Oh, God, come on, parents.
The advice soon changed to action when Stephen provided Matthew with a fake ID so he could make his escape to Ontario and get a new job.
Okay, that's going above and beyond, like, loving your child.
It's
like,
one thing to
come on.
protect, to be like, I don't think I can talk to the cops or something, but it's like, you're obviously scared of losing your child to jail. Imagine how the family...
And that just makes me think they condone that behavior.
Exactly.
Like, that it's okay to rape people.
Yeah. Like, oh, you messed up. That's okay. We'll just fix it. And it's like, imagine the hurt your child caused that family. You're so worried about your own hurt. Look at what your own kid did. Oh, it's so gross. Once police felt they were on the trail of a solid suspect, they used the phone tap on Stephen's phone to track down Matthew, living a new life under a new name in a new city. Officers brought Matthew in for questioning. It had taken 5 months, but in April of 2012, Matthew was arrested and charged with Taylor's murder. Not only did they run Taylor's DNA against that of the victim from 2005, which proved to be a match, but he was unable to provide a solid alibi. Taylor's DNA was discovered in his vehicle, and his phone was traced to the same area of Taylor's attack that Halloween night.
Good luck getting out of that, bud.
Yeah. When it came time for justice, it was actually the elder Forster who faced charges first. For his part in aiding his son in evading the police, Stephen Forster was sentenced to 3 years. Having served a year behind bars awaiting his trial, the judge allowed his time served to be part of his sentence.
I hope he learned a lesson.
Hopefully. In spring of 2014, Matthew's trial began. On the second day, his lawyer filed an admission. Matthew took responsibility for the death of Taylor, but only to the extent of manslaughter. He claimed that on Halloween, he had left home and gone looking for sex. It was clear that he was seeking non-consensual sex, as he didn't do what the average 20-something would do on Halloween.
Go to a bar.
Pay
for sex.
Go to a nightclub. Find a sex worker. No, he left his home, drove an hour away to a small town where no one knew him, and drove around looking for a target while drinking and smoking pot.
Manslaughter my ass. I'm sorry. God.
He was only a couple hours into his cruising before he spotted Taylor. Waiting until she was in the inescapable area of the train tracks, Matthew made his move and attempted to rape Taylor after pushing her down. Using a shoelace, he started to strangle her, but she fought back, and she fought hard, ending up with defensive wounds on her arms, broken fingers, cuts, bruises, and collecting that incredibly important piece of DNA by scratching Matthew. Running out of town, Matthew discarded the shoestring and flashlight. At the trial, the video of the confession from when police questioned Matthew was shown. There are some that argue that he was questioned for too long or that he may have been coerced, which we know is always possible, as are false confessions. But in this case, it's hard to argue false confession when there's also DNA involved. At trial, the defense tried to say Matthew confessed to drinking, and that's why, when he was being questioned, he said there were points he must have blacked out. When it came to Taylor's death, they blamed her, saying she was trying to get away from his initial attempted attack, and she slipped on the small ridge next to the tracks, falling with her head landing on the pipe in the ground.
Okay. How dare you blame a victim trying to get away from a perpetrator for her own death? Are you kidding me?
You're still responsible. She wouldn't have been running for her life.
When you're drunk driving and something you do causes someone to crash and die, who's responsible?
Yeah, that action wouldn't have happened without what you did.
That makes me so mad.
Yeah, so it's I hope that's clear that it was this, line of track, but then once you got into this area, my understanding is once you got into this certain area, there was like a ridge on the side.
Right.
So not like unclimbable, but just cumbersome.
Surrounded
by. Yeah, so that's why
make
it was
it hard to
not
get away.
quite a tunnel, but you would have to climb. So that was his whole thing, is she was climbing that to escape him, and then she fell on that
still
pipe.
The cause of it, but
exactly.
So that's why they're saying manslaughter.
Yes. That he didn't do it, but yeah, he's kind of responsible. They also tried to say he wasn't there to sexually assault Taylor, and since there was no proof of rape, that the charge should be lessened. Those desperate attempts did not work. Even with the confession and admission, there was still the fight for manslaughter, but Matthew was found guilty by the jury of first-degree murder. Of course, the family couldn't move on and process the loss of their beloved child because in 2017, a judge granted Matthew a new trial based on an appeal that the jury was not given accurate directions. That direction, that him disposing of the shoelace and flashlight was not a clear indication that he had committed the murder. They also argued that the judge wasn't specific enough about how the jury could interpret the text of being creeped.
I'm at a loss.
I know you're very upset about this one.
I understand your life is at stake when you are going to prison, but the audacity.
That's what's always so upsetting, the lack of taking responsibility. It's
right then is when you
shocking.
know if someone's going to be rehabilitated or not.
Really. Really.
At least that's my opinion. I'm not a professional.
But I think that says a lot. If someone is able to say, I screwed up, I did this horrible, horrible thing that I should never be forgiven for.
Send me to jail to do my time.
Please send me to do my time. I'm not going to appeal. I'm not going to force you to go through trial. And then I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to get an education. I'm going to have a job. And then if you're up for parole, that's one situation.
Mm-hmm.
But to, from the beginning, be fighting, well, it was her fault. And no, you did that wrong at the trial. And it's just like, you have no heart. You have no humanity. Luckily for the family, they didn't have to sit through another trial. Matthew took a deal and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, a lesser charge with a lesser sentence. For the murder of 18-year-old Taylor Van Diest, Matthew Forster was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 17 years, an outcome that left Taylor's friends and family saddened. Taylor doesn't get her life back in 17 years, so why should Matthew? His defense team argues he's been focusing on his own addiction issues in prison, working to rehabilitate via Alcoholics Anonymous and other programs, which I always say is the goal, and so that makes this a difficult case for me for the rehabilitation because there's just so much disgust and anger towards someone who would go out of their way to hunt someone and to serve a sentence that's less than the age of the life he took. It's really hard. And that's the difficult thing about these conversations is, do I believe in rehabilitation? Do I think prison is used too much? Do I think things could be done better? Absolutely.
But it's a case-by-case basis.
It is a case-by-case because you hear someone that drove out of their way to do this. This was the goal, and he did it, and then he ran away. That wasn't the end of charges for Matthew, though. He was charged for the assault against the sex worker in 2005 and for another attack in 2004.
Ooh, do tell.
There was a reason Matthew left his hometown of Cherryville when he went hunting for prey that Halloween night. He had already tried to assault someone close by, and it didn't go to his plan. Breaking into the home of a sleeping 19-year-old woman, the 18-year-old Matthew grabbed her by the hair before he slammed her head into the wall and told her to come with him. He wore a mask but called her by her name, leading her to believe she might have known him. When she started to scream and said she was going unconscious while bleeding from the head, a scared Matthew fled. The dazed and injured teenager went to the police and even said she suspected it was Matthew. Just as lucky as the other case, she had scratched him and collected DNA. When his name was brought up, police brought Matthew in for questioning, but his dad, Stephen, forced himself into the room.
Oh, boy. Stephen
guy?
Fucking guy.
During the interview, Stephen provided an alibi for Matthew, taking him off the suspect list. It's really hard to not be mad at the lack of investigating here. Perhaps Matthew could have been caught and Taylor would still be alive if they had done more to take the word of a suspect or his clean record. To the new charges, Matthew pleaded guilty, which was fine with all parties involved as it meant they wouldn't have to be dragged through the trauma of a trial. What they weren't pleased with was the outcome. It was already offensive he would be eligible for parole in 17 years, but with each additional assault, he was sentenced 6 years. Those 12 years were to be served concurrently of each other and of his 17 years for the murder. If he does get out on parole, he will have to register as a sex offender for life.
I hate concurrent sentences.
Yeah.
Abolish concurrency.
Yeah.
I really, really, really hate it. It's not fair.
It's or like time served, and so I was assaulted, very minorly assaulted in Vegas many years ago. And I pressed charges and the guy was arrested and I ID'd him. I did all the stuff. I was ready for trial, all of this. And the night before it was going to trial, they called and they're like, he took a deal. And I was like, great. What's the outcome? What does that mean? And they said, oh, he got time served. And I go, time served? This just happened. They go, no, for a previous sexual assault.
It's just
What?
It's diminishing each victim when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. Like I don't for the life of me understand. I understand time served for a single case. I don't understand
even
concurrency.
the dad, the time served because he waited in jail for a year and then it was a 3-year sentence. So he did serve
get
3
that.
years. That makes sense,
Right.
But I was like, and I, if this happened today, I would obviously have some different words. But I was just like, I was dumbfounded. Like how is it what happened to me
Not
equal
important.
to what happened to that person? And why is it that person doesn't get their own justice?
Yeah.
Like, why am I being put on that person's?
That's
and
how I
also,
feel.
by the way, if this guy keeps having sexual assault charges, maybe he needs more time in jail.
Yeah.
Maybe it shouldn't be time
Yeah, I find it
served.
very frustrating because when you are serving concurrent sentences for different people,
Right.
that is just disrespectful to me. If it is a single incident,
Right.
I can understand that, I guess.
Especially
still
this-
I'm unhappy with it.
Where
but
it's 3 in a row where he has done head injuries, he has raped.
he's not going to
He
stop.
has
He's a serial
attacked-
rapist.
He is a serial rapist who could have been a serial killer, which almost was if they didn't drop the ball or if they had dropped the ball. And it's like he's proven over and over and over again, literally, that that's his MO.
Yeah, that's really...
And to say like, oh, yeah, that's fine. We'll just say that those, not only do those years go together for these 2 separate attacks,
Yeah, I'd like
but
to
those
hear
go into the
from
other.
someone in the court system why there's such a thing as concurrent sentences, because
Yeah.
I really don't get it.
The only other thing I could see it for also is like if you did have a serial killer, someone like BTK or something, and you can say concurrent life sentence because you're only going to get it once. And then
Yes,
you can
that
say
makes sense.
he's serving
He's not getting out.
He's serving his life sentence for all of those victims.
Yeah, because there's
That's
no point
one
in
thing.
giving, honestly, 384
Oh, I
years,
know.
there's no point.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. But when it is a possibility of getting out and
Yeah.
you're serving concurrent sentences, makes no sense
And
to
you're
me.
getting charged for these horrible crimes like after you've already been charged for
Yeah,
murder.
It's really disappointing.
Yeah. And you know what, though? At least it happens in Canada, too. We are all doing it wrong, you know? There's
I'm sure there's a reason for it. I just
Something-
don't know it. I'll Google it later.
When those 17 years are up, hopefully he's either rehabilitated and can truly live a different life, or the parole board will see that they have a serial attacker, someone who could have potentially become a serial killer in the place he should be. We'll just have to wait and see how it turns out when he's up for parole in 2029. When giving a victim statement, the survivor of the 2004 attack had this to say. On the day I was attacked, I woke up and blood was coming out of my head. I remember there was so much blood it covered my body. I was in a lot of pain and I was very disoriented. I have never been so scared in my life. Hopefully, all of the survivors and families of those that were victims of Matthew Forster have found ways to care for themselves and to find peace. As part of my personal effort to do more to cover missing persons regarding people of color and Indigenous people, at the end of each episode, I'll be sharing a missing person story. This is a very recent and still active case in the Portland area. Last seen on September 20th, so literally less than a month ago, Juana Morales was walking in the Hazelwood area of Northeast Hasselo Street and 128th Avenue. It was 9 p.m. and she didn't have her phone or any money on her. Juana Morales was last seen wearing a green shirt, blue jeans, a black jacket, and black shoes. She's in her early 40s and 5'5". If you know anything about Juana's location, you're asked to call 911. Her family is desperate to have her back home. As you know, I'm happy to provide a commercial space for free on the show for small businesses, especially owned by women or people of color. So please feel free to email us at murderintherain@gmail.com if you're interested in being featured. Today we're talking about the wonderful pet-friendly CBD products by GaiaProvides.com. Using ethically and locally sourced ingredients paired with sleek packaging, Gaia has everything you need to provide your pet with pain and anxiety relief. They have a wide array of options when it comes to giving your best furry friends CBD. Roll-ons, treats, salves, tinctures, and even a bath bomb. As we all have small, sometimes busy, sometimes antsy pups, it's nice to provide them relief with something made for pets so they're safe, enjoy it, and don't get sick. So be sure to visit GaiaProvidesLLC.com. That's GAIA ProvidesLLC.com and use code RAIN15 at checkout for 15% off of your order. I mean, not stop
Be
you.
first? Get out of here. You sicko. They were talking about that, how you can really understand anybody from anywhere. And I just thought it was
that's rad.
so beautiful.
That is beautiful.
That's not.
She had a happy child.
You caught what I got.
I sure did.
Funky
I've got
dunk.
swollen tongue syndrome. Longer term positive outcome. I got a cold. Watching TV in the middle of the night and there's like a Shaggy song on a commercial or something, and I just started saying, I was like, Mr. Bombastic, and Josh is like, that is how he sounds.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's how you sing to Shaggy.
That's why I was shocked it ever got popular. I remember distinctly on my way to Mount Hood Community College for the first time, that was on the radio.
Oh my
and
God,
even
how
then I
funny.
was thinking, how is this a thing?
Do we hear that he sounds like he's sucking on helium or something? Anyone? Hello, Shaggy? Hello?
No.
It wasn't me. Let's just talk.
Hey,
This whole
somebody will listen.
This whole episode, Shaggy voices only.
How was your week? Did you do anything exciting?
Really crazy.
Along, the word is among, you stupid.
What an idiot. There was a move.
That's funny. I made a weird mouth noise.
I burped as well. So perfect. Great minds.
We need Josh here to babysit us. We're just like,
I know we are so,
It wasn't me.
we're so off task when he's not in here.
Our
He's going to make
taskmaster.
you edit this episode.
I know. I should. Oh my God.
As punishment.
Listen to yourself.
You're ridiculous.
Look at you.
12-year-old adults.
So that dude ate Zeus? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Gaia walked into the room and the guy had a big full belly and she's like, where are all our kids? And he goes, oh, Rosamund.
Classic. Way to tie it all together.
Murder in the Rain is produced and edited by Josh McCullough. Written and hosted by Emily Rowney and Alicia Holland. Artwork by Jamie Costa. Music by Kai Pfeiffer at kyfifer.com. Check out our website, murderintherain.com, for additional information on all cases, a fun interactive map, and be sure to subscribe so you can receive our newsletter. Check out the Mad Props page for coupon codes from some of our sponsors. We love your reviews and seeing them on all streaming platforms, especially iTunes. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And suck my balls.
Please put that in.